then you draw a grid over the picture and over your paper, and it's much easier to take, small samples of it and put it in, and you end up with a pretty good likeness, of the picture. And that's the same application to mapping the Earth, right? So if you looked at previous maps, and one of my favorites is this one. This one is from before Columbus. In fact, does it say what year it is on there? About 50 years? 1492. Yeah, so about 42 years before Columbus. Don't miss out. No, I don't want this. I don't want an elephant in my email box. What the heck? Can you imagine? It just would all, throw everything off. So this is really cool. This is a wall-size map. There's multiple copies of it. I don't know how they moved it from one place to another, though, to make copies. But it's actually, this one is upside down. Wow, that's kind of interesting. If you could see the little red sections here, those red sections are Latin descriptions of the place that's indicated there. How come this one is upside down? That's. Here's one. This is, no, it switched again. I don't want it upside down. See, I keep saying it's upside down because the way this one is presented, you've got it in the way that we normally kind of put Europe over here, and here's the Mediterranean, and Africa, down here, and Asia over here. No New World yet, right? And the ocean is only this wide. Remember, they thought of it as Earth. If you knew how much water was there, they probably would have called our planet water, because it's not so much Earth, it's more water. They even argued over whether the Earth was floating on top of the water. And Copernicus has a terrific argument in one of his works that explains, you idiots. No, he doesn't say that. Earth is heavier than water. It won't float on water, even if it's a big piece. It's not like that one guy in the wit, burner, small rocks. No, small rocks don't float. Right? But so they had this actually upside down, which is kind of interesting, and it's famous because of how accurate it was, although when you look at it, you realize by comparison to our maps today, it's not accurate really. Although even our maps today, we can argue over the different types of maps that you're using, because depending on the model, just like our discussion about model-dependent realism, when you're mapping, what's the use of the map? You have different models which are better usefully for your particular purpose. But Alaska is almost always wrong by comparison to the lower 48, because of how it looks, etc. But so mapping improved tremendously with the new grid project. It transforms the philosophy of things by thinking everything is like a machine, everything is measurable, so we can measure the Earth. And that actually, considering he was in the military, Descartes, I'm back to Descartes momentarily, right? That Descartes was in the military and they had artillery now. And the neat thing about artillery is that you could blow the crap out of people quite a distance away, right? But you have to know how. Because, if you're like Monty Python, they're, light the thing and the cannon goes like this and shoots, the totally other direction, right? Or, they had the holy hand grenade to kill that rabbit, which, has big nasty teeth. familiar with, okay. Some of the stuff is so ridiculous that you have to know about it, because otherwise, what could we talk about? So this mechanistic, it's a good word, right? Mechanical, mechanistic.
Kind of fun to say. Mechanistic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is fun. Try to say it 3 times.
I get stuck on Blue Buick.
Mechanistic. Oh, I guess you can say it. Blue Buick.
Try saying toy boat.
Toy boat. Toy boat. Toy boat.
No, you gotta say it fast.
Toy boat. Toy boat.
So he's trying to apply this mechanistic universe to the scripture. And in doing that, he ends up finding all kinds of issues. I mean, of course, there's the problem of the battle, where Joshua is trying to destroy Jericho, and Jericho won't fall down, right? And so he prays or whatever, and God holds the sun in the sky until, am I in the right story? Anybody? Yeah. Holds the sun in the sky until the battle's over. And, okay, wait a minute. Can that actually work? No. So there are issues that he finds in the Bible, and he critiques it. And so he has certain conclusions. I mean, he wanted to classify and compare the topics and passages, study the nature and properties of the language. How is this language aimed at? Who is the audience for this? I mean, this is all common sense stuff today. When you're reading, like we recently read a book called Beyond Measurement, and looking it up, it discovered that there's lots of books about the history of measurement and how it developed and so on. But this particular book ended up being a bestseller, and you're wondering, why is that? And one point made by one of the group was that it's written by a journalist. So it's much easier to read, and it kind of reads like a journal article as opposed to an academic piece. And so basically it was more popular for the readers. So if you're writing for a particular audience, you have to aim at that audience. And he's trying to analyze the Bible retrospectively that way in order to figure out who it would be for. And some of his conclusions, which we don't agree with really today, but his thoughts were that the first 12 books were written on a single theme by one author, probably Ezra. The prophetic books are fragments. That's true. We know that there's lots more books out there as they discover them. And the interpretations of God's revelations are flawed. You see how that's going to get him kicked out of the synagogue? That's bad news, right? And he moves on then to argue that revelation was practical. The goal of all of this stuff and all of these different religions is essentially the same. They're all trying to do science with the abilities, with the vocabularies, with the understanding of nature and the relationship to the divine that they had at the time. And as this basically evolves, it doesn't use that word, right? But as this evolves historically, we end up with progress. The progress keeps, different religions, and I notice this, how you feel about it, but as you read the folks that are the heads or the scholastic highest educated people in all of the major religions that I'm familiar with, they all tend to move towards an agreement on practically everything. When you finally get to the very tip of the mountain, so to speak, you end up with one thing left basically, and that's the Catholic view that God is other than the universe, whereas the Asian tend to view everything as all united, right? Even though they don't refer to it as God, right? And so you get that difference between thinking of God as an other that, in some respects, is separate from us. But how did Spinoza go with this? Well, Spinoza gives us pantheism. So pantheism, literally, pan meaning all. It's the Greek root for all, right? And theism, God. So everything is God. So that's fun. Now there's two ways to do this. I'd like to keep going with these first and then go to the ethics. But so following my notes here, notice that he's going to conclude all of nature is God, and all the laws, not just our moral laws, but all of our laws, like stop on red, I guess, but no gravity. Well, he doesn't know gravity yet. But all the natural laws. Don't kill.
Elliptical orbits. That was a Kepler thing.
Well, Descartes wrote a book that he never published called On the Traits of the Earth. And it never got published because that was when Galileo ended up being punished for his view of, that Copernicus's theory was correct. We now, of course, know that Copernicus's theory was wrong because he had only circles. Kepler gives us the ellipses, right, etc., which are, lead to much more correct. I don't know at what point Spinoza, what he was familiar with in that sense. But yes, those kinds of laws. Basically, the way the universe works is completely God's doing, right? And it's all God, including you and me and all of the religions and all of everybody. We're all part of God. And so therefore, you should not kill other people for their religious beliefs. You should instead have, what's the word that begins with T?
Tolerance?
Tolerance.
Tolerance and temperance.
Either one. Tolerance. Be tolerant to the others, because once they start learning science, once we all start learning science, we'll all start thinking, well, E equals MC squared, right? He didn't have that, but we do. I don't think you can go anywhere today without believing that E equals MC squared, even no matter what religion you say you hold, right? So he's essentially right in thinking that science is going to eventually be the main way that we think of as gaining knowledge. And by the way, of course, he, like Descartes, thought it's only going to be a generation or two before we know everything. That was really optimistic about that. And once we know all this stuff, there will be no longer any point in having religious wars, because we'll realize that, they're people, just like you and I. Their beliefs are slightly different, maybe just one iota of difference. Silly. Why would you kill somebody for that? Right? And so this argument for toleration is significant. And by the way, the reason I have Jefferson in here is because that view of toleration is going to be passed on to John Locke. Because even though Spinoza will die before Locke is in Amsterdam, and he's there because he's accompanying William and Mary, who will eventually become the next King and Queen of England. He learns and reads Spinoza's Ethics, and it impacts him, and he becomes a proponent of toleration, and in fact writes the letter of